Hello everybody, I'm Valyssa, and for those of you who don't know me, I am an F-Zero speedrunner. And after spending a whole bunch of time playing various F-Zero games, I've developed some very strong preferences for control schemes in anti-gravity racing games. In Redout 1, I started using the arcade control scheme immediately because it's most reminiscent of F-Zero. But now in Redout 2, we are blessed with full button remapping. So I've been playing around a bunch, and after some experimentation, I have settled on something that feels very intuitive and very nice for me to use. So I figured I would just put out a video to share my button mappings, in case some of you might find it useful. You can see my input display in the bottom left corner of the screen. This will show exactly what I'm pressing at any given moment. And let's get started. So to start things off, we have acceleration. By default it is on R2, but in the F-Zero spirit I have put it on A. A for accelerate makes sense. Just feels very intuitive to me. Not much needs to be said about that. And similarly, I use the B button for brake because it's a button you don't need as often, but it still needs to be within reach to quickly press it. And again, B for brake. Feels very logical. Now for the boost button, I want to use a button that's easy to use. So in F-Zero GX on a GameCube controller, I have bound it to the Y button, because my thumb just naturally lays over the A button and onto the Y button. And in a similar fashion, on Xbox style controller, I have my thumb naturally laying on the A button and hovering over the X button. Very easy to press in a pinch. Just feels very nice to use. Similarly, Hyperboost. Now this is one that I'm still not 100% sure about, but it's what I use and it works. The main issue I have... Let me say what it is first. So Hyperboost, this new feature in Redout 2, at least compared to the active boost of the first game. You can activate a Hyperboost, and on top of that you can also do your normal boost. And since it is related to the boost, it made sense to have it close by, so I bound it to the Y button. The main issue I had initially was that sometimes when reaching for the Y button, my thumb would also be fairly close to the B button. But after a while I found that to not really be an issue anymore, so that is what I have settled on. Now for steering, I think that's kind of a given. Left and right on the control stick. And up and down to pitch up and down. Which, once again, very similar to F-Zero in general, especially GX. Next up we have Strafe, which I have bound to the shoulder buttons. These are a bit harder to see, but L1, R1, or LB and RB. So I can freely use them while also steering and pressing various buttons. So the main downside of this is that you cannot do an analog strafe. You can't do a half power strafe. It's all or nothing. In practice, I don't think it matters all that much, but I felt like it's worth mentioning at least. I also have the rewind and respawn button. The rewind doesn't work in time attack mode, but if I hold the select button, or I guess that's the share button now, yeah, I bound that to rewind / respawn. It's within quick reach, but it's also not something you would need to reach for in a pinch all that quickly, so it kind of just makes sense to me. And start is start. That makes perfect sense. Now finally we have the camera controls. You have your look back button, which I personally bound to my left stick. And the reason for this is because it's fairly easy to press, and usually when you're looking backwards you're probably not about to make a turn. Otherwise, good luck not crashing into a wall. And I find that it works pretty decently. I haven't had to use it a whole lot yet, but I imagine in versus races it could be very convenient. So L3 for that one. And finally there is changing the camera field of view. which I put on R3, because it's also a button that you don't need very often. In fact, it's kind of just a set it and forget it. So with R3, switch between first person, kind of close-up view, and far away view. And the far away view is the one that I do like to use. Now moving on to the flight controls. So this is a big revamp compared to Redout 1. It's one that I struggled with quite a lot in the beginning. I'm not sure if that's because I was trying to, you know, mold the controls to be more F-Zero-like when the flight controls just aren't very F-Zero-like. But eventually I did find a good solution that works pretty well for me. Starting off, we have strafing in the air, which I kept to be LB, RB. It kind of just makes the most sense to keep that the same. It also means that when you're strafing off the track, you instantly start strafing in the air too. There's just not a reason to split it up, really. Same story for pitching. I have that on control stick or left stick up and down. Works out pretty well in my experience. And finally we have the roll. So you might know when you go into the air in Redout 2, you can not only go left, right, up, down, but you can change your angle. And it's actually a very important mechanic, because when you want to land on a track, you want to make sure that you're level with the track, otherwise you might incur some damage. And on top of that, it might be needed to make certain jumps. So I find that it's important for the buttons to be, or the control scheme to be intuitive and easy to reach. I had experimented with using R2-L2, or RT-LT, but I found that my brain did not register in time to start doing a roll when I'm in the air, because you're only in the air generally for about 2 seconds, and reaching for those buttons that I otherwise don't use felt very unintuitive to me. So eventually I did settle on the left stick. Now it still takes quite some practice to really master knowing how to fly and how to hit your targets. Initially, the simplest jumps in this game felt very difficult. If they weren't going straight ahead, I found that it was very difficult to move myself to the side or to roll, and then to land back on the track without just completely overshooting it or anything like that. And a part of that really comes with experience, knowing how air controls work. As a general rule, I would say less is more. Don't go overboard on strafing, and don't go overboard on angling yourself. And generally, you want to launch yourself up a bit, and if you're still struggling with landing your jumps... Wow, that's a long fall. If you're still struggling with long jumps, just don't boost. Take your time. Take some time to register, oh yeah, I'm in the air now. And kind of go through it in steps. So generally, first thing, I would rotate or roll my ship to match the surface that I want to land on. And from that point, I can start kind of just tapping L1 and R1 to make sure I'm lined up correctly, because the track has some amount of magneticism to it. If the jump goes forward and to the right, if you just go forward, the track will want to pull you to the right already. So if you go full strafe to the right too, you will overshoot it. And as a result, it just takes some getting used to it, not panicking when you're going into the air. But it definitely does take a lot of practice. So yeah, really, practice is a lot of what it comes down to. And this is what's felt good for me. And I hope it will help you out if you're struggling with the default controls, or you also want to try something different, but you're not quite making it work. Yeah, I hope this has been useful to you. Expect some more Redout content in the near future. I'm definitely planning to do some time attacks, and to also probably try to route any %, but it might be a bit long to actually start running. I don't know. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.